welcome to the Doofcast, the official variety podcast of doofmedia.com. Singing from the top of a waterfall, my name is Scott Daly.
In firing an arrow at a tree while jumping off a cliff, I'm Matt Freeman.
But what if you miss?
I'm Matt Freeman. I don't miss. Ever. Literally. Ever.
That's true. That's true. Hey, wait, in this scenario you've created in our script, does that mean I'm the love of your life waiting for you at the top of the waterfall?
Hey, I've just laid out the breadcrumbs for people to follow.
This week on our show, it's a very exciting episode, Matt. It's another one of our Council of Doof episodes. Why don't you explain to the people listening at home what that means?
Well, once a month, those individuals that donate to us on Patreon at the Doof Warrior level or above, our Council of Doof, will get to collectively decide on a movie for the community to consider for entrance into the canon. Scott and I, and then maybe some guests, will meet, talk about the movie, and then present our case for why it should or should not be admitted.
But as always, we're leaving the final decision up to you guys. So stick around, listen to our arguments, and then find a link in the show notes to go cast your vote. Our vote will be over on our Patreon account. But as always, you do not need to be a patron to vote in this. We're opening this one up to the public. So please, everyone listening, patron or not, please vote in this. Vote about what you thought about Baahubali. But listen to us first. I kind of just spoiled what we're talking about, though. So, Matt, what has the council brought for us today? Pretend you didn't hear the part about where I said the title of the film.
Yeah, and didn't read the title of this episode on whatever device you're using. This week, the council has put forth the 2015 Indian epic film, Baahubali, The Beginning.
Oh, boy. I am very excited to talk about this film with you, Matt. I think right here at the very beginning, we are going to put a disclaimer, and that disclaimer is Matt and I are two white American guys, and so there's a lot of both cultural and mythological context that this movie exists in that we are basically entirely ignorant of. So
you've probably seen slightly more Bollywood / Indian cinema than I have. But I don't think either of us have seen much at all. So
no. So yeah, this is coming from two people who just sat down and watched a movie and know a little bit about movies in general, but don't know a lot of these kind of films coming out of India. So don't expect like expert critique here of exactly what it was doing and a lot of the imagery. It's so funny how like Western society is so Greek mythology focused, like, and so. Like Hindu mythology is something that I just have no understanding of at all.
That was, I guess we can talk about that briefly. Just like it's sort of obvious many times in the movie that there are references, that there are cultural references and religious references. And I don't understand them. And in some cases I was able to like Google and get something. And in most cases I was not. And then sometimes I figure there's references that I'm not even realizing our references, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's an event happening and I'm just, you know, blithely just thinking that this is a thing happening in the movie and maybe it's a reference. I don't know. It's always, I'm going to try not to make this whole conversation about kind of that aspect of the experience, but it is always really interesting watching something like a cultural product from another culture, because so much of it you're aware is going over your head, and then some of it you're not aware is going over your head.
Yeah. One thing I really would like to spend some time on is why I think this movie still works very well, despite my complete ignorance as to a lot of the mythological references that it's making. I think that's a fun conversation, because I do think a lot of this movie just works as an artifact of storytelling, just general, like universal storytelling.
It's just a good movie.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, we've jumped ahead a little bit, but let's say right here at the top, this is going to be a full spoilers discussion for Baahubali, The Beginning. So if for any reason you haven't seen this movie yet, I think we can go ahead and say at the top here, go watch it. It's a lot of fun. It's on Netflix right now, in multiple languages. Interestingly enough, Netflix, like normally if a film is available in multiple languages, there's just like you go to the audio settings and can switch between English and French and whatever. For whatever reason, this movie has 3 different copies available on Netflix: the Hindi version, the English dubbed version, and then the version in Tamil, which I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right. So another disclaimer: apologies for everything I'm going to be pronouncing wrong throughout this episode. But I think that was one of the two languages it was originally filmed in, so that is not the dubbed version. So that's the one I watched, and they're different. They're different lengths too, and I don't know why that is. Like the English version is like 15 minutes shorter, and I don't know why.
That's interesting.
Maybe they just thought we couldn't handle those 15 minutes.
I didn't notice that, honestly. So just to be clear, they like filmed the scene in Hindi and then they filmed the scene in Tamil.
They filmed it in Tamil. I don't think it's the Hindi version is a dub. I think it's Tamil and God, I suck at languages, so let me look this up. Sorry.
Hindi and
Telugu.
Yeah, but so does that mean it's just it's so unique to me? Like they literally filmed it in two languages. Is that true?
It seems like it. Yeah.
Okay,
like they filmed each scene twice. Each bit of coverage, each angle, with the actor speaking both languages.
Yeah.
I think that's what. Unless what it means is that they just go back and forth between those two languages. I don't know.
I don't either. That's.
I don't know enough about the differences between these languages to be able to tell if they're jumping between languages. Don't know.
Yeah.
Again, a lot of ignorance going on here, but I think we'll have some fun things to say about the movie regardless. So we're going to talk all about Baahubali. And then I've got some things on my mind. I watched and played some stuff this week, Matt, and it got my brain a turning, and I wanted to talk to you about some of them. So that's what we're going to finish up the episode with. So that's our episode for this week. That's it.
All right.
Let's just dive right into Baahubali. We kind of already did that, but let's do it again.
Dive deeper.
మా దేవుడు అమరేంద్ర బాహుబలి రక్తాన్ని వినువు. జై మహేశ్వరి.
So, Matt, what is Baahubali about? What is this movie?
In ancient India, an adventurous and daring man becomes involved in a decades-old feud between two warring people.
Yeah.
I guess it's hard to encapsulate what is really a epic 3-hour generation spanning conflict in a summary. But that's true.
This movie was written and directed by S.S. Rajamouli. It is, I think, one of the most expensive Indian films ever produced at the time. I think it was made for $25 million, which I know for like us Americanized Hollywood folks, in which they spend $200 million regularly on their big epic films. 25 million doesn't seem like a lot, but for their film industry, that was a whole lot of money to spend on a movie, and it made a whole lot of money. One of the highest grossing films ever released in India. I think the Hindi dub version of this movie was the highest grossing Hindi dub in India for I think still. The franchise is hugely popular, hugely successful, both in India and around the world. Big hit of a movie.
Can I just say that based on that budget, or even just objectively, the movie looks great, and the battle scene in particular, which is really more of a battle act of the film,
Sure.
Is incredibly good.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, there are moments in the CG that I think it looks kind of sketchy. The snake moment, like the snake, like anytime it's an animal, a CG animal, which ironically, my version of the film had CGI pop up in the left-hand corner. Anytime there was any kind of violent scene with an animal, like when the one guy is wrestling a bull, it had CGI in the corner. And I wonder if that's just literally like a Indian censorship thing where they needed to make clear that no animals were harmed, that this is all CG.
I think that's what they were trying to do. But so, I mean, I agree with you, but for me, I thought all of the animals were actually sort of intentionally a bit exaggerated. Like the snake is sort of a primordial, like perfect snake, and the cow or the buffalo or whatever kind of animal that is, it's like, ridiculously enormous and muscular and all of these things where it's like, it's not real, but like in a way where it's because this is larger than life. It's because this is fantasy, basically.
Totally.
And then like the battle scene, like I like battle scenes in movies. I always have. I think they're fun. I sort of go out of my way to watch anything that has a big battle in it just because I think it's a cool. But like this looks. I hesitate to say this because it's such a dramatic thing, but like it looks better than like the Lord of the Rings battle, any of the Gladiator battles, the MCU battles. Like it's just like cleanly shot, and there's like a huge number of combatants on the field, and they all appear to actually be fighting. Like the choreography is good, the way it's shot is good, the kind of artistry of like the weapons and the fighting is done well. Like there's no point where you're watching it and you're like, oh, they obviously did that to hide the fact that they don't have very many extras, or they obviously like there's dust everywhere. Like no, it's just it's borderline perfect, and that was the thing that blew me away. I mean, the movie's fun overall, but that was the part where I was like, how did they do this for $25 million?
Yeah, and I'm not saying I disagree with you here. I think there are moments where I could tell like some of the people in the battle, like some of the wide shots, you could kind of tell those were just CGI models charging forward, that they like didn't spend a lot of time or money making those look as realistic as maybe a Hollywood film would. But like all I was thinking about during this giant epic battle sequence that closes the movie was Game of Thrones. All I was thinking about was the Long Night battle, the most expensive battle ever shot in the history of television. And it was so fucking dark you couldn't see anything.
Yeah. And this is just perfectly lit.
Yeah, this broad daylight, perfectly lit thing. Like you said, there's no tricks and tips to kind of like. I mean, there certainly are. It's just out in the open. It's all out in the open, and it's vibrant and fun and yeah. I mean, the battle goes on for a long time, but I think it's engaging. Like there are phases to it that felt natural, and you kind of understand the to and fro of the fight, and I think it resolves itself in a very satisfying way that is centered around our main character, the incomparable, quite literally, Baahubali, who is just like the greatest human, by design, the greatest human being that has ever existed. And like this is kind of, I guess, to me, a good place to start talking about this movie, because I find him such an interesting character in all the ways that he's not a typical interesting character. Like I was thinking, I sent you a message about this earlier in the week, but I was thinking about Lord of the Rings, and I was thinking about the character of Aragorn, and I was thinking about Aragorn in the books, Aragorn the way Tolkien wrote him, who is just this incredibly skilled, incredibly competent, incredibly amazing badass who like he doesn't make any mistakes. He doesn't like, he's perfect. He's basically Baahubali.
Yeah.
And then in the movie version of Lord of the Rings, they took that guy and they said, okay, we got to make him interesting though. And by interesting, what they meant was he's got to doubt himself, and he's got to reject the call, and he's got to do all these things that we attribute to modern heroes, right? That people that are like uncertain and unsure, and part of the arc of through the movie is them, developing and learning the strength to believe in themselves and believe in the power that they have inside of them. And like that is Aragorn's arc in the Lord of the Rings movies. It's not his arc in the Lord of the Rings books.
Yes, exactly.
And so Baahubali is this mythological hero from a bygone era who is just like he represents virtue in basically every way, any virtue you can pick, like pick a virtue, and he represents that. He's the kindest, he's the strongest, he's the fastest, he cares about his mother over anything, like that's just like that is who he is. And I find that refreshing and delightful, actually.
Yeah, I agree. He's the classical philosopher king of antiquity. He's
right.
schooled in arts and science and public speaking and ethics and of course warfare. And he's the best at everything. And yeah, I agree that like I was thinking about I kept comparing this movie to like the MCU because it's our big thing we're doing right now, where it's our modern mythology. It's our modern larger than life superheroes fighting terrible villains. But you're exactly right that even like Captain America, for example, who is the most kind of obviously straight-laced and virtuous, he still struggles. He still is uncertain at times. He definitely had a period of refusing the call. There's never been like true ambiguity with him, but even so, they're still struggling. Whereas this is just, you're right, all the way on the axis of just, this is a virtuous and admirable character who embodies all of the virtues that you should try to embody, you viewer. And there's something, like you said, you use the word refreshing. Like there's definitely something refreshing about like just observing like, oh, this is a morality tale basically, but it's showing you a character who the movie is just portraying as being great. And then like the converse, his brother, or his brother who is all of everything that's wrong. Like just a perfect example of corruption and jealousy and small-mindedness and earning the wages of sin. And I just beautifully like sort of clean and elemental in the storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing that is so interesting about this for me is if you would have asked me beforehand if this movie about a perfect guy who never does anything wrong would be interesting, I probably would have been like, nah, man, like that's boring. Where's the character's arc? What is going on with him? But that's like, the arc is almost, does the universe deserve Baahubali, right? Like, is like everything bad that happens to him is a result of the world rejecting the kind of virtue he's representing, succumbing to greed, succumbing to sin, succumbing to these baser instincts, and he's having to battle back against those things. And so like there is still struggle, there is still intrigue, there is still all these things, but like they don't come from our protagonist in that regard.
Well,
like,
one thing I was going to say is I don't think Baahubali is the protagonist, because he doesn't undergo change. So first of all, we're already sort of confused in our conversation because there's basically
there are two Baahubalis.
There's two Baahubalis. The younger, the son, has a greater claim to being the protagonist, even though we've sort of been talking about the father this entire time.
Yes.
Whereas the son actually does sort of have an arc, or at least half of an arc, because the movie the saga continues into the next movie. But like, I think I'm gonna maybe not even bother to try to say anybody's name. But you know, the girlfriend of young Baahubali is
Bahu Jr. Let's just call him Bahu Jr.
The girlfriend of Bahu Jr. is like the main character, maybe.
I guess one of them, yeah. I mean, like,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's I think there's Shivagami, who is Bahubali's grandmother, right? Davasena is Bahubali Senior's wife, Bahu Jr.'s mom.
Yeah.
And then there's Katapa, who is like his surrogate father character, the badass
warrior man,
who also stabbed. We learn at the very end of the movie he stabbed our boy in the back.
Yeah.
What?
I know. What a twist.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it is interesting in that regard. Like, he is a Superman type character, and in like modern Hollywood has like really struggled to make a movie about Superman because they don't know how to handle him, and they don't know what do we do with a character that is perfect.
Yeah.
What they try to do with Superman is they try to either deconstruct him or just make him imperfect in certain ways. And that's a thing to do with the character. I'm not saying that's a wrong approach, but there is this approach as well, in which like the person undergoing an arc is almost you, the listener, because the movie, like in the mythological tradition, it is supposed to teach you how to be better,
right,
through observing the best that mankind has come up with, basically.
See, yeah, I think so. And I guess that's one thing that I really don't know what, if anything, this story has to do with mythology or with the Hindu religion. I mean, for all I know, nothing. On the other hand, it could be, oh, this is a classic story from antiquity. I literally have no idea. I have no idea.
I looked it up enough to know that this is not like they just took a myth and then made it a story. I mean, it borrows from, obviously, you can tell just by watching it borrows from just about every mythological tradition of like the kid removed from where he belongs at the beginning and then raised elsewhere, and then, you know, stands up into his destiny to be the badass savior king. Like that's like, I mean, that's every part of the world has that myth. That's like, this is why Campbell was able to do the monomyth, because like there is some innate human tradition and storytelling that just tells stories like this. So, but no, this is not specifically referencing anything. I mean, obviously it is, though, because like there's the guy is called Shiva several times, although he is not supposed to be literally the god Shiva. But they like, this is the part of the conversation where I struggle, because like I know enough to know that just the bare minimum without really being able to dive into this in any kind of detail.
Yeah, I'm basically in the same general place there. I'm still thinking about your comment about Superman, because really, yeah, I mean, most of the movie doesn't really revolve around Baahubali, which I think is the way you do that. Like, or rather, like it spins around him as the axis in a way, but it's sort of more about the more flawed characters. It's kind of like how we don't really meet Superman until like 30 to 45 minutes into the original Superman movie.
Yeah.
And even then, like, you're really following Lois Lane and you're following Lex Luthor. You're not really following Superman.
Yeah. And I think you could argue this movie does that same thing, because we don't actually meet Baahubali Senior until 2 hours into the movie. This is a thing we talked at the beginning that I've watched a little bit more Indian cinema than you have. And this is a thing that every big epic Indian story I've watched does this thing where, like, more than halfway into the movie, they'll just go, okay, now we're going to tell you this flashback story, and it's going to be like an hour long thing. It's going to be like another movie inside of our movie. I've seen 3 films that have done that exact same thing. And I don't think that's something that you would do in a Hollywood film. I don't think you could get away with that. I think people would say, no, you can't do that. That's confusing the shit out of people. But like, I love that they just do it. Like this movie just does it, and it works. Like, it really does work. There was a little confusion for me, like into the end of this first movie. It was like, okay, so he's his kid. But the thing about, so I guess full disclosure, this is the first of 2 movies, and I watched Baahubali, the second one, the finale, I think it's called, because we were originally slated to do this movie last week, and then we had to push it at the last minute. So I had some extra time. So I was like, I'm just going to watch the second one. And first of all, without spoiling it, the way the second movie wraps up the story is just incredible and wonderful. And I almost think the second movie is like better in every way. But I think it was only on watching the whole story, watching the second movie play out, that I really got a grasp on who everyone is and what's going on, and understanding everything. Because I do think this movie kind of like throws you in the deep end as far as like who everyone is and how they're related to things. And I do think, if I'm trying to be as charitable to the movie as possible, I think the point of that is because we kind of are in Baahubali or Shivadu's head for the early parts of the movie.
Yes.
And he just doesn't understand what the hell's going on. Like, he's just kind of like, he just feels this draw to climb this waterfall, and then he meets this beautiful woman and he's like super into her, and then he just kind of like, in order to impress her, gets himself in the middle of this huge conflict in the middle of this kingdom, and then it's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm the returned son of this kingdom.
So he's definitely a highly distinct character from the father, right? Because he's really interesting, because, like you said, his motivation, like he seems like sort of a lazy, disobedient, shiftless child at first, which is funny. Like he's very, very much in contrast to the father.
Mm-hmm.
And then he disobeys his mother, climbs up the mountain to find the woman, and seduces her. And it all actually seems rather selfish, in contrast to kind of the morality tale aspect of it, until she asks him to go save the queen, and then he sort of gradually transitions into being a badass, especially when he starts to kind of, I think, realize like what's actually going on. And that's more of like an arc and character development in the way that we're kind of used to seeing it. I thought that stuff was all great. I definitely thought about watching the second half. I just didn't have time.
You should. And everyone listening to this that has watched only the first half, go watch it. It's bigger, it's more ridiculous, it's more fun. This movie is, the majority of the movie takes place in the present with Bahu Jr. The majority of Baahubali 2 takes place in the past with Bahu Sr. and seeing his entire backstory. And then the third act of that film is back with present Bahu Jr. and the resolution of the conflict. But it's so good. It's so good. So I don't know. I'm trying to get my head around why this worked on me in a way that a lot of other stuff like that just it's a tale that's been told many times before. Broadly, it's simplistic. We talked about there aren't that many arcs. I think really what did it for me is the earnestness of it. Like this is an absurd movie. Like there are images throughout this movie that are just so over the top and ridiculous that you laugh at it, but the movie takes itself seriously. I think my guess is that the movie knows it's being over the top and ridiculous, but the tone of the film is that no, this is super serious, and look at he's a fucking god. He's incredible. Like even the opening scene of his grandmother, like drowning herself to keep the infant child above the water. Like that's such a powerful scene that is kind of just absurd, but it's mythic. It really is.
Yeah. I think you're exactly right. There's no winking, there's no, like, this is a modern movie. This is made in 2015. This is a modern movie. Everyone making it had modern sensibilities. They know that the things that are happening in the movie are over the top, but there's no winking at the camera. It just completely, swerves right into it. Right. I mean, there's elements of like the final battle that actually did remind me a lot of the final battle of Minas Tirith in Lord of the Rings, or the battle of Pelennor Fields, I should say, to be completely accurate, which I of course have to be, because in that it's like giant war elephants and giant flaming battering ram and cave trolls, and like that movie just goes like big as possible. We've been building up to this for 3 movies. We're going to be ridiculously big and excessive and overly melodramatic and everything, and completely unapologetic about it. And that's kind of what this felt like to me, like in terms of like how it made me feel, is like, this is gonna be awesome and you're gonna enjoy it, damn it,
Yeah. I mean, the dude has a fucking chariot with a spinny blade on it, which is just fucking amazing.
They fire the flaming cloth with the ballista and
oh
the
my
scorpion
god,
or whatever.
The cloth was the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Great.
I've never seen I've watched so many movies with big battles in it, where like at some point they all start to be the same, right? Like, especially nowadays, like modern battle languages. Okay, there's going to be a scene where like there's a fuck ton of arrows and it's going to kind of blot out the sky a little bit because that looks really cool. And to be fair, it does. That looks really cool. And then there's going to be like a cavalry charge at some point, and there's going to be some flanking going on, and then the main character is going to try to rally the troops, and he's going to succeed because he's perfect and represents all that is good in the world. But when the ballistas launched those 2 things, and I realized it was just a giant fucking scarf or something.
Yeah.
And then they lit it on fire. My jaw literally dropped because I was like, I have never seen that before.
Yeah.
And that, like, the reason is because it's totally impractical and would never work, and it's ridiculous. But who cares?
It's who like you may scoff at it, but then you sort of feel embarrassed for scoffing because you're like, but it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And the movie sells it. I think like it looks, the way they shoot it and everything, and just the way that little set piece is carried out, you're just like, yeah, that makes sense. Sure, whatever.
Uh-huh.
Like the part of your brain that would realize that probably wouldn't work physically, you're just like, no, it might work.
Prove it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Prove it.
Yeah, and then like you said, there's like the chariot with the spinny chopper, which is also highly unphysical, but who cares? I love the probably the talking about like how little I care about things not making sense physically. Like the weapon that his evil brother carries is like this giant like club mace, which has a chain, but it's like retractable.
It's so great. I love it.
It's like literally only now occurring to me, like, how is he supposed to be retracting the chain into the handle? Like, what is the mechanism there? And it's like, I don't care. Obviously, it's an awesomely designed weapon. I love that it's like 5 times bigger than it should be, because it emphasizes how strong these like superheroes are, basically.
Yeah. Well, and and I love it because it's blunt and brute forced, and it's not subtle. It's not agile. Like it's everything that Baladeva is, and everything that Baahubali is not. Like like everything, that's like the look of this movie. Everything ties into these central themes. The way the characters dress, the way their facial hair is done, like everything ties into this. I love like the city. The city is this like, and I'm assuming like all digital, right? But this is this massive, huge looking, beautiful city.
Yeah.
This is it's just a pretty movie to look at. It's all bright, it's all vibrant, it's all colorful. Even the moments when, like, you know, they're going over to Devasena, who is like chained, like this horrible fate where she's like chained to this one area of the city and has been like slowly collecting a twig pile to burn her enemy on, which is so fucking metal. I love it.
Yeah, I love it.
Like even that part of the city, I was like, yeah, I mean, she looks kind of bad. Like she's all scarred, like she's all like, her face is bruised, like
sores
and sore. Yeah, but like it looks pretty here.
Yeah,
like
I love the architecture. It's a beautiful setting. It's a different setting than we've seen. You know, like I feel like there's just kind of a sameness to so much of the kind of art direction that we see in so many movies, and this was just so refreshing and new and just visually great. I don't necessarily want to move on from that if you're not done talking with about it, but I did want to say, like, you know, the song sequences in Indian films usually, like, I don't think they work on me, in the sense that, like, I just haven't really like learned to watch films with that that particular motif or conceit, or what's the word for what I'm talking about? Anyway, like it's fine. Like I accept that this is a thing from a way of interacting with film that I'm not used to. But like this movie, the one song sequence that I thought was just like genius and probably elevated the thing like well above what it would have been without the song. I think this was a song sequence. Now that I think about it, maybe I'm wrong. But the whole thing with the golden statue, isn't there a song sequence adjacent to that?
Probably, yeah. Because they see someone recognizes Baahubali and they start passing it back, and then
they're chanting,
and everyone's chanting.
And then I thought it transformed into a song at that point.
I think it does. I mean, like every single song in this movie is just like, the lyrics are just like, Baahubali is awesome. His arms are the best. Yeah. They lift up the world.
We love him.
His eyes are like fire.
Yeah.
His shoots arrows like super good. And that's just the lyrics of this. Like it's I love it though. Right. Like it's just I don't know. I mean, I'll let you finish your thought.
Just that, like I love the whole image of they're erecting the giant golden statue of the guy and then because they're saying Bahubali, he imagines, that there's this giant statue of Bahubali that dwarfs him, and I was just like,
Oh my
that's
God.
such a great image.
It is.
And it's just so well executed. And I was just like, if I wasn't completely sold on the movie before that, I think that was the moment where I was kind of like, oh, this is like a myth that I'm watching. I know it's not literally a myth, but like I feel like I am watching a myth. And then I was kind of swept along just perfectly for the entire rest of the movie from that point.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like we talked about the earnestness of this movie, and like I think that's what I love about it is just that like every aspect of it. And this is something that I think, to speak generally about Indian cinema again. And when I say Indian cinema, what I actually mean is the 5 movies I've seen. So I'm just going to go ahead and assume that is representative of a country, one of the most populous countries in the world's entire breadth of cinema. But like it goes for broke in everything. Like it's got comedy, it's got action, it's got music, it's got dancing, it's got love, like everything, and it just goes for it. And there's no, like, I feel like there's no timidity here at all. Like it doesn't, like it just being big and being over the top and being absurd and being full-hearted in all of it is just part of what this movie is doing in everything. And you can't help but be swept up in that. You just can't. Like, even, I mean, there was a part of me that like the first 45 minutes to an hour of this film, I was kind of just chuckling at it and being like, oh, this movie, this is just silly. And I really hadn't bought into it. But eventually it just kind of sweeps you up because it's really hard to not get into something that is being that earnest and full-hearted. And it's a love story to this character that's been created. And I don't know, it's really, I find it really difficult to not like this movie. Like, I don't know if I could not like it if I set out to do so.
Yeah, I felt the same. I think there was definitely a chunk toward the beginning where I felt disoriented. Frankly, I was just like, I don't know what's going on, and part of me was like, I think erroneously, I was like, oh, I think that I'm supposed to just understand some of these things from cultural osmosis, and I don't.
Yeah,
and I think that was just a mistake. And actually, the movie just kind of took its time in bringing you to the characters and establishing what the situation was. And then once you understand what the situation is and who the main characters are going to be, which does take a while, but it's a big epic movie, so that's fine. Lord of the Rings probably takes 3 hours to set up all of its characters in the first place. Then you're into it. And I definitely was. Like, I really think the scene with the statue was the one where I kind of like was like, this is actually awesome. And then I felt that way from that point on. So
yeah, I mean, I do think that if I was trying to be critical, I think that the first hour and a half of this movie does a lot of jumping around. We go into the main city and meet all those characters in there before we have any real concept of who these people are and why it matters. I mean, we just have we have this vague understanding that this group of people that also contain this girl that Bahu Jr. is really into are freedom fighters trying to free the queen who has been captured and chained up somewhere. But like there's no frame of reference on that. It's like, what city, who, why do we, like so yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I made the assumption that maybe this is part of the grand mythological tradition that people that are aware of these things would just know all this stuff and would just be in along for the ride. But yeah, I mean, eventually I agree with you. I got to the point where I'm like, okay, I get it now. Like we meet Katapa and he's like one of my favorite characters in the world. I love this guy so much. He's wonderful. And I just had no idea. I was like, wait, who is this? Like, and there's this whole scene where someone's trying to sell him a sword and he just like demolishes the sword because he's a badass and wonderful. Right. And I'm like, okay, that was a cool scene, but I have no emotional connection to this guy. And then he quickly, maybe not quickly because the movies are both 3 hours long, but he becomes the character I have the most emotional connection to. Like that at the end of that movie, like when he kneels down and puts Bahubali's foot on his head, which again is perhaps an image that at the time I was like, maybe I just don't have the context for why this is significant, other than like the obvious, like I bow down before you and I you walk on me, like that's how much I revere you. But like he's like his dad, and
Yeah.
he fucking killed the dude.
Yeah.
He admits at the very end of this movie that he stabbed him, and you even see like they show a quick version of the scene in which you see him stab him in the back, and
Yeah.
it's jarring, and it's
Yeah.
like I didn't realize I was this emotionally invested until like the very end of the movie, in that moment where I gasped. I was like, not Katapa, he's my favorite.
I know, it's such a dramatic cliffhanger that I
Mhm.
really was just like, no, you can't leave me there. No, I need to know. I need to see justice done on this asshole.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry about not being able to say names, but the actor who plays Bahubali, who plays both of the Bahubalis,
Prabhas, and I think
Bahubalis,
he's like, I think he's like a superstar. Like I think he's
he,
seriously like,
yeah, he's incredibly charismatic.
Yeah.
It's an interesting, like, I don't think we have this particular brand of charisma in any American actor that I can think of, but it is just kind of delightful. I think he's a big part of why, like you said, kind of the earnestness of the movie. A lot of that is the earnestness of this particular actor and just being this guy,
Yeah. I mean, I think for this movie to work, you need a Superman type. Like you need someone that can look scary and fierce and confident and assured without being cocky and like pig-headed, like you need him to both be the person who knows he's always right, but knows he's right in the kind of way that doesn't make you like be like, oh, this asshole, like. And I think that's actually harder to do than you might think.
Mhm.
And I think he has the face for it, he has the look for it. He always seems like I think he's kind of trickstery in some places. Like there's the early parts in the scenes where he's like he's trying to woo I forgot her name, the girl he's into, I think Avanth, I think. He's trying to woo her, and he's like, she's passed out, and he's like drawing pictures on her hand and her arm without her noticing, which is just kind of delightful. Like he's just being trickstery and jokey, and I think that endears you to the character in a way. But even like talking about Bahu Senior, who is not that character, he's just like he's very Christ-like in a lot of ways. Like that's the kind of the way he's playing him. Like he's just like, whenever he's around like the masses, he's just kind and gentle with them, but he's also fierce, and when he gets angry can be like powerful. Like it's both. It's both types of things all rolled into one. I mean, when you have a character who's literally playing a designed everyman, where he is everything, he is good at everything, you need someone that can pull that off, and he does.
I feel like we're so used to seeing like the character who comes off so great and perfect in public, and then behind closed doors he's actually terrible. That my brain has broken, and like I can't accept the existence of like an actually righteous and virtuous person. And so that's one that, like you said earlier, that's what makes this refreshing, is like, number one, the movie does portray him as being this righteous person. Number two, the actor actually sells that. And that's fun. And that's very, very, I don't know if I've ever seen like an American movie that really carries the same feeling as that.
To go back to something we talked about at the very beginning, though, I do think there is something just broadly, like, I think this captures a broad, independent of culture, but a broad human idea of storytelling. I really do. I think there is something about this movie that just like, it doesn't matter where you're from, it doesn't matter what culture you grew up in, it doesn't matter what films you have or haven't seen. If you sit down and give this movie a chance, and I know a lot of people in our country won't, because they're like, oh, reading, I don't want to do that. I guess you could listen to the dub version, but I listened to that for about 30 seconds and I was like, nah, I can't do it. But I do think like there is just something inherently human about a lot of what's going on here, that like, yes, there's a lot of cultural and mythological and religious subtext and allusions and imagery going on in this movie that completely went over our head. But the core of it, I mean, like, I have no idea what the significance of the like splashing water on the Shiva stone is, like what that's supposed to do. But like Bahubali picking up the stone that is like 3 times the size of him and walking it to a waterfall so it's always being rained on. Like, I don't need to know why that's significant
Right.
to know that, holy shit, that's huge. Like,
Yeah.
I don't need to understand the full context of it to get why that's an important moment.
Yeah, and in that particular case, you see the other characters' reactions, and
Right,
then you see him literally say, like, "Look, now Shiva will always be honored," and it's like, okay, I understand exactly what happened, even if I don't know the real background.
Yeah,
but
and there's a callback to that in the finale of the second
oh
one,
my God.
where there's a Shiva stone that he puts a bunch of blood on, and it's like this is a tribute, like, to like the death is a tribute to. It's a great callback. Good job, movie.
That's great.
Love it.
Gotta see that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you've like the first movie, I think the second movie cost more because it was so, like this. It was so successful. They gave him a little more money, and I think he used it. there are scenes from the second movie that are like memes now because like they're so absurd. You might have actually seen one. I don't want to spoil it for you, but like I remember seeing the scene like posted as a meme on Tumblr or something because it's just so over the top and ridiculous. It's hilarious and wonderful. It's great. It's great. This movie's great. I love this movie.
Yeah, no, I am gonna watch the second half. We're gonna have to do a second half Doofcast at some point.
Yeah, I mean, like you're gonna love it. Like you're gonna like it's the first movie, but also it's like filled with political like intrigue and like shady dealing, and like there's a lot of politics in it as the two brothers are like competing, or he's trying to be undermined by his brother. And the irony of this is we know going into it how it all ends, but like seeing how it gets that way is just really wonderful and fascinating.
And that's exactly what I was hoping would be in it, because that's the big question you have at the end. Like what possible lies or trickery must have happened in order for our bro to stab him in the back. And yeah, so that excites me. I mean, the storytelling, like you said, just the fundamentals of storytelling, like that you're always having fun. You're moving along at a reasonably good pace, which is really saying something considering it's a 3-hour movie. Like usually when you hear 3-hour movie, you just think immediately like, oh, okay, this is going to be a slog. This is going to be a self-indulgent slog. And other than the first, like you said, maybe 30, 45 minutes where I didn't really get it. Like I didn't understand where we were going or what this was. Beyond that, it's like quite a nice clip. You're always having fun. There's no real chance to get bored because you're always moving on to the next kind of interesting development. And since you're into the characters, you're there for it. And just really solid fundamentals. And that's all I ever ask, really.
Yeah. So unless you have anything else to talk about, I guess here's one thing. I think the movie gives Bahu Jr.'s love interest like kind of short shrift here. Like I don't think she gets as much time, and I'm talking about across both of them now. The story is so focused on the other women in his life, his mom and his grandmother, that I think she just doesn't get a lot to do beyond the stuff we see at the very beginning. Like I found it, I liked her and I liked the what they did with her character at the beginning. And then I was kind of bummed that we just kind of leave it behind. And in this movie particularly, we just kind of leave it behind. And that's because we literally jump to another time, and she just doesn't have a lot to do for the entire back half of the movie. And then in the next movie, it's mostly a flashback, so she's not even there. And then the finale is really just a fight. So we just don't see her very much, and that kind of bummed me out. I wanted to know more about her. I wanted to see like her end, but I guess her end is she's in love with Bahubali because everyone is. Who wouldn't be?
Yeah, I guess I would be mildly disappointed if I finished the second one and we don't really find out like what her deal is, other than just like she's a warrior woman who loves Bahubali. But minor complaint in the grand scheme, I guess. But I guess, so many different characters, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. It's epic. I mean, like Arwen kind of gets a shitty arc in Lord of the Rings, right?
Well, that's because they made up a arc, quote unquote, for her, and
right.
it didn't really fit with the story anyway. So
sure.
Yeah,
that's because well, that's for a lot of reasons. I don't want to get into why Tolkien did not give the women characters in a story that much time.
But I do like that all of our podcasts are becoming Lord of the Ring podcasts.
I mean, yeah, we have to bring up the Lord of the Rings at all times. That's part of the rules.
Just so everyone knows, the Dark Tower podcast that we do is basically also a Lord of the Rings podcast.
I mean, I think there has not been an episode where you haven't brought up the Lord of the Rings in some form or fashion, even if it's just like a one-off thing or like a 20-minute talk about how this is exactly like the Lord of the Rings. It's been every episode.
I hope that's true.
But I mean, I think it. I know we're joking around, but like, I think it fits very much here. Like that, the Lord of the Rings is mythological storytelling in the Western tradition. This is mythological storytelling in the Eastern tradition, in the Indian tradition. And it is interesting the ways in which they are similar and the ways in which they are different. Because it reflects how those cultures are different,
right?
And how they're the same in some ways.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I think maybe to just fully articulate what I was trying to say earlier, like the way in which they seem most similar to me is how they feel. Mm-hmm. In that both of them are reaching for this just like huge epicness and extremes of like these great heroic characters and these terrible evil villainous characters, and it's not just a battle, it's a gigantic battle. It's mm-hmm. not just, everything is boiled down sort of to its elemental, mythological core, and that's what so that's why they feel similar, I think.
And even like the enemies, the main enemies in this movie are, I guess, kind of supposed to be orc-ish. I don't know. I was a little unclear about who these people were supposed to be. They appear to be like in blackface, which I don't know how big of a deal. Like, it's one of those things where like, is this offensive? Am I supposed to be offended by this?
There was definitely some cultural shifting of gears at that moment, but I mean they almost literally dress and behave the way orcs do in Lord of the Rings. So that was yet another connection that my brain was definitely making. So fun movie. Apparently those characters spoke a synthetic language, by the way.
Oh wow.
That was made for the movie.
Wow, it is Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Where's the ring though?
Good question.
There is a ring in the second movie.
There's a ring. Okay, well,
it's not a ring of power.
This is interesting.
It's symbolically a ring of power.
See, now I'm interested. now I want to watch that movie, and then we can have a whole thing where we talk about the Lord of the Rings comparisons. All right.
Okay. So here's the big question at the end of this conversation, though, Matt. Does this movie deserve to be in the canon, in the Doof canon? Do you want this movie to represent our opinion on great movies?
I would say so.
I tell you why I'm hesitating here. I'm hesitating because I feel like this is just a type of cinema that I just don't have a lot of knowledge in, Mm-hmm. And so to declare this is like, yes, this is like, and no one says this has to be the representative of Indian cinema in our canon, but like at the rate we're doing this, like the odds of getting like a heap load more Indian films in the story, probably pretty rare, right? I think in the entire life of our podcast, we've talked about 2 movies from India, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's true.
That's true. I guess to kind of, I don't know, get another angle on that though, like this is the one that the council brought to us.
Sure.
So they must have thought, out of all the Indian cinema, this is the one that we're going to show you, that we're going to suggest that you watch.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we have to make that assumption, right? Because
yeah. And I mean, it's definitely not just like for me, we watched 3 Idiots, and we talked about 3 Idiots before, and like that's such a wildly different movie to me that I don't like that has, the only thing it has in common with this movie is that there's songs, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So like there's, but this movie is awesome because it's awesome. Like I really don't think it has much to do with the fact that it's like this particular cultural tradition. It's like, well, it's just an incredibly well made and well told and well acted story. That it does obviously does come from that cultural tradition, and that's great. But I think I would be happy to see it in there. If people don't think so, I'd be really interested to see why. Like maybe they do think like, oh no, if you're going to have Indian film, shouldn't be this one, and here's why. I'd be interested to hear that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only reason I'm having this pushback is because I just like there's this thing where people say Bollywood and they use it interchangeably for Hollywood, and they say like American film is Hollywood, Indian film is Bollywood, and like that's not true on either side, right? Like in America, like there's Hollywood films, and then there's like a whole bunch of other films that are being made, and the same is true in India. India is a huge country with a lot of people and a lot of different cultures intermingling in that country, and there are big hot spots of film in India that have different historical traditions that focus on different things, and I'm not even sure if this is a Bollywood film, to be honest with you. I don't know, but so that's why I'm a little bit like we tend to lump things together, and so I don't want us to be accused of saying like, yes, this is the film that must represent this entire country in the world now. But I don't think that's fair, and I don't think that's what the council like wants it to do, and I don't think that's what the canon needs to do.
Yeah, and the thing is that statement would be true regardless of what Indian film we'd watched.
Sure.
So it's sort of cancels itself out, perhaps. Because like here's the thing, I feel like you and I, we've watched like 100,000 different anime things at this point. I've probably watched 24 different like Chinese martial arts movies. I feel like I have a pretty good handle on that particular like cultural subgenre. So like but like this is just one where we haven't been exposed to that much of it. That's fine. We'll never be fully exposed to every cross section and subculture of film in the world.
Yeah, it's literally impossible. We could spend the rest of our lives watching 20 movies a week and still not be.
All I can do is say that I like this a lot. It made me feel things that I don't think I've felt from a film before. And that's a pretty nice compliment, I think. And I think I would enjoy having it in the canon personally. So there you go.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I am basically in my head going to just put these two movies together and say that my vote for Baahubali as a yes is for Baahubali the beginning and Baahubali the conclusion. What a fucking just like to name your movie the beginning and the conclusion is such a called shot that I love to death. It's so good. It's like I love everything about this. Like I love did they just like SS Rajamouli was just like, I'm fucking going for it, man. I'm just Babe Ruth walking up to the plate and I'm just pointing to the stands. I'm about to knock this one out of the park and you all fucking know it.
It feels so much more like pure and sure-handed than like, Infinity War and Endgame where you're like, yeah, you guys workshopped that one. You guys spent $100,000 on the name of the movie, didn't you? This is just the beginning, the conclusion.
Yeah. It's fucking great. It's fucking great. What do we call this movie about Baahubali? That's just the first part of the story. Baahubali, the beginning. Fucking A.
Love it.
Love it. What a movie.
Yep.
All right. So we are both voting yes again. One day I'll vote no, but not today. So now it's time for you guys out there listening to decide for yourself. Have you watched Baahubali? Please, if you're going to vote, please watch the movie first. Just don't be like, I don't like the sound of that. That doesn't sound interesting. No. Give the movie a shot. Even if you don't make it all the way through, just watch the movie, give it a shot. And then decide for yourself and let us know what you think. If you're voting no or yes, we want to hear from you. We want to know why you're voting that way. If you have a film out of India that you actually do feel like would be a better fit for our canon, let us know, because I want to watch that movie too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We are luckily watching a lot of foreign films in the next few weeks, I think.
Yeah, when I was looking at our schedule, this October is a month of foreign language films. We have an Indian film this week. We have a Russian film next week. We have an Italian film the week after that, and we have a Mexican film after that. Or is
Awesome.
it
So
Spanish? Del Toro.
I don't know, but we're getting our wish in any case. We're getting
He's Mexican, yeah.
Yeah. We're getting our wish for more foreign films, because that's what we'd asked for in the past. So
I know I'm excited about this month.
Yeah.
I really am. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And we're going to learn a lot. But and Baahubali is such a great start to it too, because I had such a good time with this movie.
Yeah, me too.
All right. So yeah, send us an email at doofmedia@gmail.com. Reach out to us on Twitter at doofmedia, or message us on our subreddit. That's r/doofmedia. There will be a post for this topic, and let us know why you voted the way you did. Or you can just leave it in the comments of the vote itself, which is going to be on our Patreon account. That's patreon.com/doofmedia. The vote will be in the show notes of this very episode, so you can go check that out and vote, and then leave us a comment and let us know what you voted and why, because we'll talk about it next week when we get back together to talk about the results and see if Baahubali was in. And maybe by then Matt will have watched the sequel and then can gush about how much he loved it, because I know you will.
Awesome.
All right, Matt. Let's talk about some stuff that I've been watching. How about that?
That sounds fun.
So, okay, this is going to be. We just had a wonderful, lighthearted, fun conversation about a wonderful, fun movie, and I'm going to have to take the tone down a little bit here, because I watched a movie called Dick Johnson is Dead. It is a documentary that is currently playing on Netflix. It's a very Netflix week for us. It is a documentary about a woman who did the doc. Have you ever seen the documentary Camera Person?
No.
Camera Person is a documentary by Kirsten Johnson, who is a documentary filmmaker. And basically in Camera Person, she just like took a bunch of the leftover footage from a lot of her documentaries and like put it together and like constructed a movie out of it, kind of talking about, what it's like to be the person behind the camera observing all these things. And she makes like a cohesive narrative and theme out of it, it's a delightful movie that I just loved so much. In Dick Johnson is Dead, she is making a movie about her father who is suffering from dementia and slowly dying. And her method of dealing with this is to make a documentary in which she kills her father in various ways, like various ridiculous ways. Like one of the first deaths is like he's walking down the street and someone drops, or like an air conditioner, like one of those hang on the window air conditioner,
Right.
like falls and lands on his head and kills him. He falls down the stairs. Like a guy is carrying a wooden board with like a nail in it, and he doesn't see him and turns quickly and like stabs him in the neck. And so it's her real father helping her with this project. And ostensibly it is about her dealing with the fact that her father is going to die. Her mother had Alzheimer's, and she says very early on in the movie that she has this one recorded like thing of her mom and it was when her mom was already like really far gone into Alzheimer's and like couldn't remember. Like she's asking her, "Do you remember what my name is?" And her mom can't remember. And she's like, "This is the only footage I have of my mother. I've been making documentary films for 30 years, and this is the only footage I have of my mother." So she wants to spend time with her dad as he is, dying and forgetting, and have all this footage of him as she remembers him. And this has been a hell of a year for us and like just for humanity. And one of the things that this year has done for me a lot is like make myself very aware of the mortality of my parents, because coronavirus is a thing that affects elderly people way more than anyone else. And we are both at an age now. I'm 35. My parents are getting up there. They're in their mid 60s now. And like, so just being aware of your parents' mortality is something that has been on my mind a lot. And I watched this movie where this woman is like trying to use art to deal with the death of her father. And it really fucked me up. Like it's very powerful. It's very moving. It reminded me, remember that movie we did an episode on, The Act of Killing, which was like a documentary that used like the illusion of filmmaking and creating scenes and doing recreations to kind of deal with a genocide of an entire people. and it's doing a similar thing, but with this woman dealing with her father's death. And it is uncomfortable because like there's a scene where like he gets stabbed with a nail, right? And they've got like a fake blood thing on his neck that's like spewing blood and it's getting all over him. And you're just like, is this good? Like, was what she's doing here? Like,
is it helping?
Is this helping her? Like, what is it doing to him? Like, what is it like to him, this man who's dealing with his own death and like
I'm gonna make a spectacle out of it for
right.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I can't really say I'm interjecting, but like it strikes me that it would really depend on the person. Like if he's somebody with a great sense of humor, then maybe. But even so, it's weird, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, and he's a delightful person, this man. Like he is so fun loving and energetic, and like he loves his children more than anything. And like I think she says at one point in the movie, like someone asks her like, and he's letting you do this, and she's like, yeah, he would do anything for me. And so it's like, of course he's going to say yes to everything she wants to do to him. And you're just wondering, like, is this good? And I think the thing about the documentary that I love so much is that I think Kirsten Johnson is aware of that and is acknowledging that throughout the course of the documentary, where she's not sure if this is the right thing to do anymore. I have the sneaking suspicion that like when she originally like slated like the concept of the documentary, it was supposed to be like a dark comedy about her killing her father as a way of processing her father's imminent death. And then over the course of making it and like experiencing her father's degradation, it kind of moved away from that. So there's these really weird interjections where it's like they've created heaven and her father is dancing with a woman who has like a cardboard cutout of her mom's face, and like so he's in heaven and he's getting to be with her, and it's like this kind of surreal goofy scene intercut with like him having a conversation with her about like how he got up at 3 a.m. and tried to go outside to call one of his old clients, and he doesn't remember doing that at all. And she, like it's heartbreaking, and it's powerful, it's moving. I would not, if you have a parent that is sick, I would not recommend this movie for you at all. But I just wanted to talk about it because like it really affected me. Like I was weeping during this movie, and it's like taking like it's sad and tragic, and I can't imagine a death worse than like slowly losing who you are as a person. But having to still be alive and having to like and being aware of that, and like I think he says in the movie that like the thing about it is like I don't feel like I'm losing my memory. It's just everyone around me keeps telling me that I am. And like that's it's terrifying and it's heartbreaking and it's, oh my God, it's powerful. I mean, it's one of the best documentaries I've ever seen, and I think because it challenged me, because there were moments where I felt like I don't know if this is good. I don't know if what you're doing is good. It feels exploitative a little bit, but also it is a person dealing with one of the scariest things in the world, which is both death and losing a person that's been there for you literally your entire life.
Yeah.
And, oh boy. Yeah.
There's something uniquely horrible about all of that.
Yeah.
There's this very brief period where I was like volunteering in like the dementia wing of a assisted living facility. And I think I was probably like 16 or something, actually, maybe 17, 18. And I think it was just bad for me to have seen that. Like there's a part of you that wants to be like, well, it's enriching and valuable that you see people suffering because it gives you greater appreciation for life. And really, honestly, I'm just like, no, I didn't need to know that kind of suffering existed. I would have been okay without that, honestly. Sure. It's horrible. It's fucking horrible. There's no silver lining, you know? It's one of those things where you're just like, this shouldn't exist. This is an insult to the universe.
Yeah.
Sorry for the downer, but like, yeah, it's terrible. It's the other thing I was thinking about as you were talking was like, this seems like it would be kind of gutting from both the perspective of someone identifying with the child and someone identifying with the parent, because like you were clearly sort of as you were talking kind of identifying with her, and as I'm thinking about it, I was imagining like what would happen if I were like the father in this position, because because it's the cliche is totally true that like when you have kids, the worst thing about your own death is that you'll be abandoning your children in your own mind. You're like, you stop fearing death for yourself, but you still fear death. It's just that you fear that your children will be abandoned and harmed by your death. And I'm like, yeah. So would I help make a weird documentary about my imminent death? If I thought it would help my kids, I probably would. If I thought it would help them, it's difficult for me to see how this would actually help, but
yeah, I don't know. I think it did. Like, I think it did help her in some way. I mean, the interesting thing is, her father is not dead. Spoilers,
Mhm.
I guess spoilers for a documentary. Her father is still alive. An article just came out yesterday, actually, that says that Dick Johnson is still alive. I think he's in an assisted living place now because his dementia has progressed. I think this documentary was recorded 2 years ago now. So, I don't know. Like, I don't think there's a way in which a person can prepare themselves for losing a parent. Like, I just don't like. I think this is an exercise in failure from the beginning. Like, you're not going to have some special sauce that makes you go like, okay, I am now okay with my dad's death. Like, we've done this thing. There's a part in the movie where they do like a funeral for him that he's attending. Like, people do that. Like, this is not the first time that's happened. Or sometimes they do like living funerals or whatever. So they get a chance to say goodbye to him while he still is like who he's still himself, right? Because part of this is your personality goes away. Who you are goes away eventually. And I think they were thinking that like this would bring some moment of closure where everyone gets to say goodbye and like we feel like, okay, like we've done it now. We've beaten the pain that this thing is going to cause. And of course you don't. Like, that's impossible. Like, and I think a lot of this documentary is reckoning with that fact, is like a person desperately hoping there's something she can do to make herself feel okay about what is about to happen to her father and what is about to happen to her and what is about to happen to her whole world. And the conclusion is you can't. He's gonna die. You're gonna lose him, and it's gonna feel like the worst thing in the world, whether or not you made a 90-minute documentary about him or not.
I admit that I'm not like facing any imminent situations along these lines, but like I don't want to be okay with my parents' death.
Right.
Like, I don't. That should be horrible, right? Like I know I'm saying that from the position of someone whose parents are healthy, but like, yeah, I don't know, man. I'm not saying she's wrong, right? Like, everybody processes things in their own way, obviously.
Yeah.
It's just I don't think I'll be watching this, but thank you for telling me about it.
Yeah. And I don't know. Like, I was incredibly affected by it, and all I wanted to do when I watched it was kind of work through my feelings on it. And so I have used this platform to do that. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but I don't know. I guess if you folks out there give it a shot or have watched it already, let me know what you think. I'm curious because, yeah, it had a profound effect on me. This is not a film I will forget anytime soon. So that's Dick Johnson is Dead. It is playing right now on Netflix. It's a lot. It is sure a lot. I think we're just going to finish the episode there. I think that feels like a good place to call it quits.
Yep. I think the tone will not pull out of this.
Nope. I can't switch to talking about a video game now. It just doesn't work. So I'll talk to you about Hades some other time, which is a game I've been playing a lot of, and I have fun things to say about storytelling in regards to that game. But that's a time for the future.
Yeah, I'll look forward to that next week.
Okay. That is all we had for you guys this week. As we said before, let us know what you thought about Baahubali. You can reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or at our Twitter account at doofmedia. You can also go to our subreddit r/doofmedia and find the post for this episode there and comment there.
Yeah, if you're not already subscribed to this podcast feed, we encourage you to do so that you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, any of those other applications.
Oh, everywhere.
Yeah.
And if you like what we do here and want to support us, consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. You can head on over to patreon.com. And while you are there voting on whether Baahubali should get into the canon or not, you can pledge $1 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, or more. Each one of those levels has a unique reward that is attached to them, whether it is getting to participate in polls for book club, whether it is getting to decide what movies come to us for these episodes. This is a Council of Doof episode, and our council is those people at the Doof Warrior level or above on Patreon. So thank you, council members, for your continued support and for nominating this movie. It sure was a pleasure to watch, especially after watching a documentary like Dick Johnson is Dead. So thank you very much. We very much enjoyed that. And you can be on that council and help select films for us.
Yeah, and if you want to see a sample of the sort of content that you get at the $10 Doof Trooper level, then you can just listen to the previous episode on this feed where Daniel, Michael, and I talk about how to get the most out of the school system, which is from our Freeman Bros podcast, which is the patron-only podcast. So go just listen to that, and if you like what you hear, maybe just check out that reward tier.
I liked what I heard.
Well,
so maybe I'll donate.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Wait.
Thank you, Scott.
Wait.
And also, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, because every review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the stuff we're doing here.
Yeah. All right. Next week on the show, we are going to be talking about the 1997 Russian film Brother. Well, that's the English title. I don't know what that is in Russian because I don't speak Russian, but it's a movie called Brother.
All right.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.